In this video, I'm going to be going over a few of the debugging tools we have at our disposal when working on Android applications in Android Studio. So the first collection of tools I want to go over with you can be found under our Android Monitor window right here. So I'm going to click on this little button. It'll pop open our window. And let me break what exactly we're seeing here down. So the first thing here, this drop-down box. This drop-down box essentially allows us to select which open running Android device we want to debug. So I have, my emulator up and running here, and I also have a device hooked up to my computer, which is my Galaxy S5, and I can select that here. So whatever device I select, that's what debugging information it's going to give us. So I'm going to leave it at the emulator, right now. Great. So besides that, we have a list of package names that are running on that particular device or applications, right? So it defaults to the application that we are actually testing or have open, which is our Hello Android application. But we could select whatever package name we wanted and get information or debugging information on that. We're going to leave it on the Hello Android application though. Great. So now let me break down these 4 tabs. So this Logcat tab. Essentially what this Logcat tab is doing is it's going to display all of the logs associated with that particular package or application that we are debugging. So for example, if I were to go to my emulator and pull open my Hello Android application, you'll notice that we start seeing a few more logs, right? As we open it, as I click on settings, right? It's just showing whatever, Android has defined, whatever logs Android has defined, or whatever logs we actually define and spit out. So for example, we can create logs of our own if we wanted to, let's say, see what's going on in our program, a particular value. We could set those up in our program and then we would see them here. So we define logs, or logs are defined in key value pairs. We give it a key and then we give it a value. And this is really nice because then we can filter by those keys or those values in 2 ways. We can search for them here, or we can really search for anything here. Let's say I wanted to search for emulation. You'll notice that it filters by that. If I wanted to filter by, OpenGL, I can do that here. As I said, I can also just set up, actual filter bars, so I could just select it for the keys. And the way I do that is I click on Show Only Selected Application, then Edit Filter Configuration, and then I type in the filter name, and then I type in the tag or the key that I want to create. And once that's all said and done, I press plus, and then I could select that, right? So that way I don't have to keep searching for that every single time. Great. If you wanted to get, really crazy, we don't have to see only one application, but we can see all of them. So if I said no filters, you'll notice that it's now displaying logs from every single application. Great. So now what I'm going to do is I will break down the next tab for you. Actually, before I go into the next tab, let me just make a note on this log level. So our log level essentially shows what type of logs we want to display. So we're saying verbose. We could certainly say, info only or errors only, whatever we wanted, right? So this gives us a large degree of control over what kind of logs we want to see. And this is going to be probably the tab that we visit the most as beginners. Let me tell you, I used this quite a bit when I was creating Android applications for the first time, just because you're going to want to be able to spit out those values or just see what's going on very quickly. And this is going to be the place you're going to do it. Great. So now let's move on to the next tab. Memory. Memory just shows, how much memory our application is using versus how much is free. CPU and GPU. CPU shows, if there's any CPU spikes for a particular application. We could see that here. So let me see if I can actually see something working. So if I click on this a lot, you'll notice that our CPU spikes, and that can be very useful later on. GPU, well, our application isn't really GPU intensive, but if it was, this would be the place that we can see that. Network, we don't have any networking really going on in our application, but this tab is going to be the place to actually see that stuff. So this is going to be the networking tab where we can see, once again, spikes and all kinds of good stuff here. Great. So we can also get, a screen capture of our device, clicking on this button here, which is pretty cool. And that's pretty much going to do it for our Android monitor. So this is a nifty little collection of tools that's really going to help us. Great. So now how do we actually debug our application? Well, the way we debug an Android application is we go up to the top left and we're going to click on this little debug button. Pretty simple. From there, we're just going to click on whatever device that we want to debug our application on. I'll just do the emulator. I'll click OK. And you'll notice once I do that it will go ahead and reopen our application up on our emulator. Only this time it'll attach the debugger to it. So it's now open. And now you'll notice that we have our debugger tab open, or our debug tab open, and if we had any breakpoints, we can either go forward, or skip into whatever we want to do at this top portion here, and then we could either stop or pause the debugger to the left here. So that's going to do it for, the collection of debugging tools we have in Android Studio. I hope you guys learned something. I will see you in the next video.